Oh no, it's okay. I thought we had a marksman there for a second. I was afraid this was going to be a very short gear progression about me just telling them to stop playing marksman and play something good instead. Okay. Instead it's a wild hunter, which is even worse. Hero.
Hey, what's up?
Hello. I see a bunch of muscly dudes in your profile picture.
I mean, you know,
I
gotta
mean,
come best.
I hope I can be one of those soon, you know? We're working on it, dude.
You'll get there one day. I'm just kidding.
One day. Oh, you're kidding? Oh, you don't think I can do it? Oh, no, I'm just gonna
No,
do
I
it.
think you can.
Okay.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. A little bit of work, though.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see where your audio is at. Okay, say something. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Okay, I think that's pretty good. I think we're pretty even on the audio. That's good. So regardless of how loud or quiet it is, people can at least turn us down equally. Okay, I don't know how loud this Florina Beach background music is, so I'm just gonna pop it back down to the background just a little bit. All right. Let's see here. We have a wild hunter. I think
Yahoo.
I think that's the first one. I think. Maybe second. All right. I see you're using your Maple points on Maple Tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, extra money, baby.
Yeah.
Aw, cute. And all right, let's stick to our list of questions and then go a little bit more freeform. So, you are a wild hunter. You're level 225 still?
225, yeah.
Yeah, nice. What is like? How much time do you have to play these days? Like, what's your routine, kind of?
Just now, I started my full-time job, my first one, so I don't have terrible amount of time. I'm working from home though, so I can have a little more time than usual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but besides that, not that much.
Okay.
Maybe a couple hours a day.
Okay. A couple hours a day, and then maybe a bit more on weekends, or.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, congratulations on the job.
Thank you.
It's always yeah, I guess it's a little bit different working from home, but like a first actual full-time job with like office and stuff and responsibilities can be very different from.
Yeah, the R word I don't like.
Yeah, I mean, people rely on you to do things, right? Which is I mean, it feels good because it's like people expect me to do these things, so I have value, but then, you know, you also have to do them, which is the other side.
Yeah, the ripe age of 22, I'm supposed to know everything. So.
Yeah. Don't worry, dude. You probably have like colleagues who are in their 50s that don't know shit anyway. So.
100%. They're smart though. They're smart.
Yeah. They're probably more than willing to help out with, you know, things that just come with experience of working longer.
Mm-hmm.
If it's
Absolutely.
like office politics or something.
Yeah. Oh, there's plenty of that.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit less working from home, but tends to always be a thing in, you know, in differing degrees.
Yeah.
All right. Are you just playing like a one PC setup kind of farmer? Like, what do you do in that regard, like of funding?
I'm trying not to do farming. I have a Kana set up for it. I think it's 200, level 200, and it's got, I think, Sweetwater weapons, but just Pencilier stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, besides that, I'm trying to avoid it because I know it's going to take up a lot of time, and I prefer to play the game to have fun, not to just pound out money.
Well, for some people that's fun, right? Just making more money so they can get to the being strong and just destroying bosses part faster. But yeah, it just depends on your definition of fun. Is it like an old bye-bye station Kana that you leveled up, or?
No, I had it just cause for like, I think I played it when probably a year or two ago and just leveled it up slowly. So.
I mean, it's still helpful for your links in your legion, so definitely still has value that way. Okay, and all right. So in general, if you could just make your money while training on your main, and you generally have like you have enough value in your totems to be able to use those just for training on your main, and you don't really run out?
Mm-mm.
Okay, because you don't have like insane amounts of hours to play anyway now with your full-time
Yeah.
job. Yeah. Okay, makes sense. So it's more like in the weekends you use like 1 or 2 of those, and then at the end of the month you have either some left or you're out, and then
I actually haven't been training that much because I don't know. It's hard to train on a wild hunter if you're not super strong. What I guess it's not hard to train, but it's hard to have fun training when it's
mm-hmm.
you're not one hitting stuff like a lot of other classes are. Um,
Yeah,
but
and I assume that you would like you would go to different types of maps as well, right?
mhm.
Because from what I've seen when Matt was training at 275, he seemed to gravitate towards like big vertical maps where you could just like drop down and hit both the sides.
Mhm.
And that can be very satisfying, I guess, when you're one-shotting. Maybe even like the tower maps in Lechaline, and since no one is there, you could actually maybe find a map with burn, which is crazy for Lechaline now.
Mhm.
But until you can do the one-shotting there, you'd be like shooting to the left, shooting to the right. Okay, now down jump, and it feels like you're
Yeah.
just tickling them to death, kind of. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully we can get you to the point where you're not doing that anymore. I see that your arcane power is 40, 11, 11. I don't know if this is my my weird way of playing this game, but isn't your... I feel like you leveled pretty fast to get to this point. Is that correct?
Uh, I think I did level fast, but I don't think I prioritized uh
The arcane symbols?
the symbols really.
Mm-hmm. It may be a little
That's
bit
what
of
I got lazy
combination, yeah.
with.
Maybe leveling a little bit faster and not doing the dailies as much, and then that that promotes like a big schism. Because so the two main things that will allow you to one shot, and as you continue to go through new areas, the two most important things are your is your arcane power and hitting those thresholds to get that bonus damage, and is your level for your boost nodes. And both of these are invisible. You know, they give you final damage, but only on hit, so it doesn't show up in any way in your damage range. But they will be the main deciding factors that go into, are you one-shotting or are you not one-shotting.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and sadly that's just a time gate, right? The nodes to a certain extent, because there is not that much you can do to speed up nodes. You just have to kill more monsters, and then there's sometimes event stores, and then there's the one quest in Vanishing Journey, right, where you can get 3 per week for doing your dailies. But other than that, yeah, it's just kill more monsters with drop rate 4 head. Like that's literally the only way to
Yeah.
really get them. So, but once you get your boost nodes and you get your arcane power really in tune, and especially because you know how arcane power works, right, with the extra bonus for final damage and stuff.
I think so. It's like if you have a certain number above the map you're in, you do like a certain percentage higher, but it's like capped at something.
Yeah, so it's 10% higher, you deal 10% more final damage. 30% higher, 30% more, and 50% extra, you deal 50% more final damage, and that's the highest bonus damage that you can get. If you're in any map, if you know those numbers, you can calculate ahead of time. If you don't, you could just go into the map, and then you can hover over the arcane power symbol on like the top right of your screen, and then there it'll show you like, this is the required for the map, this is how much you have, so this much is how much extra damage you deal to the monsters here, basically.
Okay.
And that will come into play with any boss as well that has an arcane arcane power requirement on the boss itself. So like Lucid, Will, I think Verisilla, like all of that stuff, they all have arcane power requirements. So that'll be like a cutoff to be able to join those boss fights as well, because that will just increase your damage by so much that it's just important to have those numbers.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and like the hyperstats will help you for a while. Like the magical number at this point is like getting to 540. That's a really important threshold to meet, because both Lucid and a lot of the maps in Arcana will have 360 arcane power requirements. So if you hit 540, that's 50% over, and that's when you hit that max damage increase from arcane power. Yeah, so that's at least like as a midterm goal, or like a short-term goal, I guess. That's one to really look out for. Of course, if you get to the next area at 230, then immediately that's 30 there already. You speed up some previous dailies, everything speeds up. Do you know about that all the areas up till this point all have 2 dailies and not the 1 anymore from a long time ago?
Do you mean like the quests or like the fun mini games?
Well, yeah, typically they all have like one of each now, right? One is like
Yeah.
kill and or gather, and then the other one is more like a mini game type thing. Yeah, sometimes people who haven't played in a while or come back, then they won't even know that like Urda Spectrum is a thing, or that there's a daily kill quest in Lacaline, for example, because it's not on the main map, because it's like one map off of the town map, and then I mean that's an extra 4 or 6 symbols a day that can definitely add up to a lot over time.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can understand in the short term, and especially when you don't have that much time to play, you're like, well, arcane symbols, like doing. If you already have that little time to play, you don't want every single day to be exactly the same and like start the same or end the same with all of the symbol dailies. If you make a habit of doing them as much as possible, then you can allow yourself to like skip out on them sometimes or cheat and be like, I don't feel like doing them today. But if you make a habit out of not doing them, then you are like heavily stagnating your progress through the game.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of invisible because it's like, oh no, it's. I mean, even the tab for the arcane symbols is like you have to collapse you have to expand it to be able to even see it. So it's it's kind of like tucked away, but it has such a huge impact on everything you do in the arcane river that it is top priority, I would say, for trying to move forward with your character.
Yeah, I had a feeling that that's what you're gonna say. I've been so lazy with that because I've been focusing on. I feel like Maple Story has so many events all the time that like all my time goes to like events and like trying to maximize on that instead.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, so I have the so there's two commands, right? I have the dailies command and then I have the events command as well. Like events is just a calendar, and then between available dailies for your level, have you looked at these commands before?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll open them both up right now. So yeah, it is definitely tricky to prioritize like what am I going to do in a day, what am I going to do in a week, and you have to balance that out as well with what is fun for me, what is not fun for me. Do I let the game dictate what I do? Do I let me dictate what I do? And to which extent do you give in, either way? So if you check dailies and dailies, weeklies, this is just like content in the game that just arises as you progress through the game. This page is kind of like what is useful for them, links to information, like what kind of equips do monsters drop, like when does it come into play. And then the second page talks about like when are these dailies kind of viable for you, based on, how long does it take, what do you actually get from them, and what is all available for you to even do in the first place. Because if there's like 5,000 dailies available for you, then the cutoff of like which ones make it is pretty damn high, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's only 3 dailies, then you could probably just do all 3 of them just to not miss out, and you don't have to be as critical. So if you're at like 225, like there's quite a lot that are available, so you can be a bit more picky. Like Maple Tour, that's a pretty fast one. Dojo, that's typically like once a week you do one run and that's it. So that's like 10, 15 minutes tops per week, and then you're done as well. But that's only if you need the honor experience, for example. Like for you, I see your inner ability, you already have the 2 lines that you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing you can possibly get is a little bit more speed on that 3rd line. You're probably gonna have to settle for like 20 decks or something there. So
Mm-hmm.
like, so dojo is maybe even like a daily that you don't even need to do necessarily. You could do it to have some backup of points so that you can get a like a dojo dummy sometime, maybe if you want to do a battle analysis or something. But there's no like huge rush. So if you do dojo every now and then, it's fine. If you feel like it, if you don't feel like it, it's whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Monster Park, I don't know if you have the you don't have the medal yet, right?
No, I'm pretty far away from that too.
Hmm.
I've been working on that actually quite a bit.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, it's just one of those things where you don't really feel the progress at all
Mm-hmm.
until you get like that first one that's actually like 77 out of 77, and you're like, oh shit, okay, that's actually pretty nice. And even when you have that, you can also make it so that you do all your weeklies on that day, so you already have the benefit of the medal for all of your weeklies, and you have that 10% extra IED. Because I don't know how much invisible IED you have, but I saw that you have 82 here on this screen, but this is unbuffed, right? Which is rather on the low end, right? I don't know for CRA and stuff if you're having any trouble there with getting a lot of your damage to go through.
I think so, but I can do all of them, all the CRA bosses.
Mm-hmm. Well, at
pretty
this point,
reliably, but
you're probably just powering through because you're already
yeah.
so much higher level. But yeah, so like these are the ones that are available. So everything highlighted in blue, I think, is worth doing. But like the priorities are definitely, but a lot of these are weeklies, right? So it's just like once a week you're done. Some of these are dailies that are optional, but I would definitely say that the symbol dailies I think are the most important. But again, it kind of depends on what your aim is, right? So I guess that cycles back. But yeah, so whatever your priorities are on a day and on a week basis, they can definitely get disrupted by events. That's a very true thing because, let's say that your rings are kind of shitty, for example, and the event that's coming has like synergy rings and master SS rings, and that suddenly becomes a higher priority. But you kind of have to guard yourself into not just adding it on top of everything. Unless you have more time available. If you have the same amount of time available and a new daily comes out that's better, well, that just means that whatever is lowest on your priority list now gets like neglected for a week, maybe 2 weeks, until you get the thing that becomes a higher priority, and then it can, come back into being part of your list. Because if you don't guard your own personal time in that way, this game will just take up all of your time, and you can very easily fill 24 hours a day with MapleStory and still not be able to do anything, right? Because even on one character, and you can just play multiple characters, and then, So yeah, to a certain extent, you have to like draw the line, like, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do, and also like this is fun for me, this is not fun for me. So I guess that ties into what are you specifically aiming to reach with this character right now?
I guess right now, I really enjoy bossing.
Mm-hmm.
I think what really draws me, like the progression
Mm-hmm.
of it, like being really bad at a boss one week and then like pracking and pracking and pracking and then like eventually beating it feels awesome. So,
Mm-hmm.
and like playing with others is fun, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like team play and yeah.
Cool. What's the hardest bosses you've killed, like solo and in team play?
Uh, all the lower hard ones. So let's see if I can bring up my UI. Everything up to the 4th bronze star I've done solo. So I guess that's CVEL and HMAG.
Oh yeah, you're using this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this you've done solo, up including these, and then these, you've all cleared with like a team.
I have done normal Lucid normal Ludus, sorry, Lotus, and
yeah.
normal Damien.
Uh-huh.
With a team.
With a team, okay. And I think he's not. I guess he's not on here, but like Helix. Like, have you done hard Golux?
Yeah, I can do hard pretty easily. Doing Hell, I have problem with the 2nd stage.
Yeah, it's tricky.
I used to be able to get to the portal thing, but I guess that glitches out your game. So
yeah, it tends to do that a lot. Yeah.
I haven't been able to use that.
I guess you'll have to rope lift or do your diagonal dash up to be. Do you put like the spinny missile thing in the bottom in the middle to kill the summons and then just go up to the top?
Yeah, or because it has like it shoots for like 5 seconds, then
Yeah, it's like
doesn't for like 5 seconds.
Yeah, it's like intermittent, right? If the timing is
so,
off, can the potato still get to the middle?
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
So I usually have to do that and the resistance guys or the bigger missile cannon thing.
Oh, the phalanx thing? You just throw those down and then they kind of...
Yeah, I think so.
Wait, no, phalanx is Cygnus. Hang on.
The drill salvo and then the resistance infantry.
Oh, resistance infantry. Okay. Does that work the same way as the other guys? Like, do you just fire them and they kind of just like run off?
They stay in one place.
Oh, they stay in one place. Okay,
I think that's the difference.
And how long does that stay?
10 seconds.
Okay.
And the CD is 25.
All right, so you do like one of the two, and then you just alternate between the two. And the potatoes move pretty slowly, so it's not really a risk for them to walk into the middle.
Yeah.
Do you ever use so one of the techniques that I found that takes a lot of can take a lot of pressure off of the runs is if you can keep the run to the point where you don't get any of the purple stacks. If you pop all your bursts to try to get through the second eye phase or get as far as possible, and you run out of you kind of run out of steam. What you can always do is just exit the portal on the left and just wait for your cooldowns to come back, and then just re-enter.
Oh.
Yeah, so even if you get hit by the bomb, for example, right, the the red thing that inverts you and everything, if you don't have purple stacks, and you get to the portal on the left and you exit, then that bomb just completely disappears as well. That's like a way to counter some of the stuff as a there. But as soon as you have a stack, then you're like bound to the map and you can't leave it anymore. But some people do, with the boss just being so tricky as it is now, just like run in, burst it, and then if they run out of steam, you just exit, wait for all your cooldowns to come back. It does make the run significantly longer and slower, but lower risk. The one extra risk is when you enter back, you have to find some way to get to the middle again to put the kill potato skill down, so to speak, without getting hit by another bomb and then having to re-enter, and then then it can cycle. But if you're having a lot of trouble, this could be like a strategy that you might want to check if it works. And another option is, of course, you can do party helix now, right? Because the coins are now no longer shared; they're now instanced. So if you can find people to do helix together with, might be the same party that you do like normal Damien and Lotus with.
That's true.
Or people who haven't done that yet, but are on the level where they've killed Seavel and killed Hard Magnus. Maybe a duo, maybe a trio can speed things up there, and it'll mean is hopefully less variance on succeeding or failing, an increased chance of superior drops, and of course more coins than if you did Hardlex by yourself.
So would say we got a drop, would only one person get that then? The equipment?
Yeah, the drops are common drops, right? So they're the same drop for all classes. So they would drop as a shared drop. So that's typically how it works. Like if an equip drop is specific to one class, then it rolls specifically for all of the characters, and then you get it instanced. Like let's say for like if you kill Hardhila, for example, right? All of the drops that drop, even if you have multiple warriors, everyone gets their own warrior equips drops. But if there's an item that drops that everyone can wear, then it gets shared. And, like the Damien eye patch, for example, or like the Berserk for Lotus. Since everyone gets that same one, there's only one that drops. And then, yeah, you'll have to make some good arrangements before the run so you don't run into any kind of arguments during the looting process.
Yeah.
We did add, I don't know if you've joined the Discord for that, but we did add one of the boss roles that you can sign up for is the Helix role as well. So if there are other people, for you and for other people in the chat who are planning on trying Helix with a party, trying to do it together just to speed up the process a little bit, more chance of reinforced gear, some chance of superior gear, and more coins, you can give yourself that role in the Discord and join the room there and just ask at any time. All the people who signed up are the people who specifically wanted, to be harassed for Helix parties. So if you don't want it anymore, then you leave the role. But yeah, so that could be an extra resource for that. Okay, so the goal would be to move towards being able to solo Lotus and Damien for now, and then I don't know if you've tried Chaos Papulatus, because it's a bit of a
No, I haven't.
It's a bit of a challenge.
He is really annoying. Even normal is annoying. Not now, but when I was at that level. So
yeah, I get you.
Yeah, I haven't even messed with it yet, to be honest.
Have you seen my CPAP video?
I think I've probably scrolled through it.
Oh yeah. I did that with the hero a long time ago. I'm planning on making a new one because that old one has the old layout of the platforms, so it's a bit different. So I plan on making a new one with my Adele. I've already uploaded the regular run, but I plan on doing it, where I analyze about like where I stand, why I stand there, why I do what I do, as like an update. But in the past, a lot of people have said that video has actually helped them a lot into, going from chaos is just like, it's literally just a chaos, just lasers everywhere and just things killing you left, right, and center, and like know where to go from going from that within like a few days of practice to a week of practice to actually just being able to clear him like quite reliably. So if you haven't checked that out, I would advise that. Selfless self plug here.
Self plug.
Yeah. Yeah, but
So
I
is
wouldn't
the
say that.
only reason? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go for it.
So is the only reason you'd kill him for the mark, right?
The crystal is a big amount of value, and it's basically the mark. Yeah, the soul shards aren't a high enough tier. The magnificent soul has like a nice rainbow color tone to it, so some people like that look. But yeah, it would just specifically be for the crystal and the Papulatus mark. Yeah, but since the Pap mark has such a low drop rate, like the sooner you can start killing him on a weekly basis, the better your odds that you maybe get a drop by the point that it actually comes into play and you're trying to go for that upgrade. Could also be like a duo or a trio run in the beginning, of course. But then again, like if it probably won't drop, but then if it drops, then what do you do at that point? And by the time you can solo, and since you like bossing, you don't really like farming. If you can solo the bosses, the boss crystal, of course, doubles if you go from a duo to a solo run. That's when a lot of the value starts kicking in. Yeah. Okay. And then, but yeah, once you're able to do CPAP and Lotus and Damien, then at that point normal lucid runs could come into play. But it'll be like a small step further. By that point you're probably already 225 to 230 235, right? You have all of the areas unlocked at that point. And that's when all of the arcane power will definitely put you over that threshold at 540 with all the extra levels, and then you can I think your how's Golem clear for Wild Hunter, since your main attack skill is a Hurricane, but I think you get off of your Jaguar for bossing, right? And yeah. Does your skill become like single target then, or?
Yeah, single target.
Okay. But then your Jaguar still hits like a bunch of things. It has like a maul and a bite or something, right?
Yeah, it's got like a. Hold on, let me pull it up.
Oh, it's got like its own UI that like pops up, right? With like a few skills on it.
A scratch and a dash and a bomb and a purple thing.
Purple thing. Is that the bind?
No, the bind is. It's like a soul. I don't know.
Oh, he like pops up like above someone. He's like.
Yeah.
Like behind him. Yeah. I've seen that. Yeah, there was a I don't know how long you've played this game and how long you played Wild Hunter, but there was a time where binds would sometimes there would like be 3 groups of binds, and all of them could stack on top of each other. And the Wild Hunter bind was like part of a separate group that could always stack with all other binds. And so having a Wild Hunter in your party used to be like really, really good, because then you do regular bind, and then when it was finished you do the Wild Hunter bind, and the boss would just be sitting there just taking it.
Oh, I mean, people hate Wild Hunters now in their party because it lags them out.
Yeah. So. Almost as much as Ho Young, where you where the iframe just freezes people's games and closes it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think Wild Hunters hate Wild Hunters for that as well, because if you use the Jaguars and they don't position properly, then you can lose like up to 40% of your burst, right?
They're pretty awful.
Yeah, it's quite a hit or miss.
Yeah.
Well, at least that new 4th V skill looks like it can do some pretty reliable bursts. Don't know if you saw that one.
Yeah, it's going to be way more beneficial to me than I think the Jaguars would.
Yeah. The Jaguars like, well, Hail Mary, but the actual confirmed damage will be the...
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so... Okay, so you worked your way here. So do you have like a set group of friends that you do these with, or you do like pickup groups, or you go through a Discord, or...
I actually went through your Discord just for the recent Lotus and Damien run. And that's actually how that's why I upgraded this Imgur to be V2, because I got the actual crossbow and the cape.
Yeah, I saw you had to hover over you had the fake soul app using for now, and then switching over to a new one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not, I guess I'm not done with Lotus and Damien, but for now, I guess. Just me sweating over it, I guess. So.
Okay.
But yeah, I have some buddies I did it with, but if I don't find a party, I can find one. It's not a huge deal.
Yeah, you got my Discord, you got the Reboot Central Discord, And if you find like one from every place, then you already have 4 people. So that should pretty much already be a party right there. Okay. So is there anything on this list here of things that you feel like you maybe don't have like a great understanding of yet, or you could use some extra explanation on these things?
I guess
Please don't say all of them.
so. No. Flames kind of. I understand the very basic premise of it. I know
Mhm.
you want stat or attack or all stat, right? But
Mhm.
if you probably want a combo of all stat and regular stat, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so you have a bunch of different possible outcomes, and some of those outcomes are good for you, and a bunch of them are bad. And you're basically trying to evaluate like this outcome: is it good? Like, is it good enough? Is it great? Or is it not good enough? Right? And for every single item, what number is considered good, what number is considered great, and what number is considered not good enough. It all differs a little bit. So there's 2 fundamental things. Like, you have to know what flame advantage is. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
I think you kind of.
Or like, if somebody said like boss flames or KMS flames. I don't know if you've heard of that. People mentioned that before. But basically, every single item inherently has a property of having either flame advantage or not having it. And based on that, there will be more variance in the possibility of outcomes, and all of the outcomes will, on average, be of a lower tier as well. So not only less chance of getting stat and or like a good outcome, but also, even if it is a good outcome, that good will be lower than for an item that has flame advantage. So if you don't know in the beginning which items have flame advantage and which ones don't, you can follow my flame guide that links to a post where all of the items that have flame advantage are all listed. So you're going to just like Control F, type in the name, and then if it pops up, it has flame advantage. If it doesn't, then it doesn't have flame advantage. After a while, though, when you look at items, you'll be able to see very quickly whether it does or doesn't, because one of the main differences is that items with flame advantage always have 4 lines of stat that are amplified. So one line of stat, for example, could be dex, one could be all stat, but one could also be jump, one could be speed, or strength plus luck or something like that. But if you see anything less than like 4 different stats being qualified being altered with the qualification there, of course. Like, let's say you have one line is strength, one line is dex, and one line is strength and dex, then those numbers will be squished together. So it'll look like a lot of strength and a lot of dex, but that will actually be 3 lines instead of just 2 lines. But you will be able to tell by how big those numbers are to be like, oh, like this is either a really, really lucky, because if there's nothing else besides that, then you know for sure that it has to be a non-flame advantage item, right? Because it's missing the 4th line. But if it has like a lot of strength and a lot of dex, and maybe also some speed or some jump, then you can make a more. Then you probably know that it does have flame advantage. But again, depends on how big the numbers are, and depends on the level of the item. So when you have a level, let's say a level 100 item, and it has like 8 strength or something on a singular line, that could just be like a very low outcome for a flame advantage item if it has 4 lines. But the chance of already having 4 lines when it is a flame disadvantage item is already pretty low, right? It's only 1 in 4 chance. So you'll see those way less. And if you've ever seen any item that has the same item name with like way less lines, then you already know, right? Because it's the item. So maybe I didn't make that clear in the beginning, but it's not like one, like let's say reinforced Gollux pendant, for example. Like that item does not have flame advantage. Like it never does. Any kind of reinforced Gollux pendant will just never have a flame advantage. So every flame you use on there will have lower standards, will have more variance, and you will just you'll just expect less stat gain from that. So it'll be a lower priority to flame, basically. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I've been trying to just get flames on everything. Decent flames. My Fafnir stuff is decent. But yeah, the Gallic stuff is I'll get like 4 decks or something like that.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. Yeah, because you have the variance and the quality of so both the quantity of lines and the quality of lines is lower. And because of the extra variance, therefore your expected value, your bang for your buck for flames on those items is horrible. So you basically want to have very high standards for everything else that does have flame advantage before you even start touching the non-flame advantage items. Just because that way your value of your flames won't be honored, essentially. Yeah, so you look at your Pink Holy Cup, for example, like it's level 140 item. It's got 52 decks and 3 all-stat, and it's got jump and intellect. Like, that's a flame advantage item. That's why we want that. That's why it's the best in slot, or for most people at least, like in most situations, the best in slot pocket item. Because it has that quality, and it has that level, and it's also part of the boss accessory set, which is possibly helpful in some situations. But if you look at another item from the same level, like a reinforced pendant, for example, if you could get these same stats on a reinforced pendant, that would be absolutely insane, right? I think mathematically it's possible to get this amount, but it would be so far, like so many standard deviations above what the average outcome is, that would be like insanely good. And if you would get that level, a quality of a flame on a flame advantage item instead, then it would be so much better even there that, you'd never aim for that high on that item, because the possible gain on the flame advantage item instead would be so much higher that flame is always like better spent there until you get to a certain point, right? And that point you get to, I tried to map that in the progression grid. I don't know if you've seen this one. I'm going to be referring to my own commands a lot, okay? I don't know if you've seen this.
Yeah, I have.
So here we have the flame scores for so the weapon is separate, right? Because of the tiers of the weapon and magic attack works differently. But the flame scores for the items, so the ones that have no flame advantage, non-advantage, you'll be aiming way lower, right? So you'll always prioritize getting the decent flames on the items with flame advantage. But once you get there, just like the fact that if you want to gain 20 stat on something that already has 40, that'll be more expensive than going from 0 to 20 instead on something that doesn't have advantage. So at that point, you can reprioritize. But you see, like the further you go, like you aim for like 50, 55 flame score on level 160 items end game that don't have flame advantage, but on things with flame advantage, depending on the level range. So the level 140 items, like the Pink Holy Cup, you'll aim for like around 110, and then for your arcane gear, that's like level 200, you'll aim for something like 150. So you see that's like astronomically above what you would get for the non-advantage items. Yeah. So as long as you're like within these parameters or like around these numbers, wherever your state of the game is, so you're at like early, late game, right? At least according to my categorization. So for like non-flame advantage items, you'd aim for to be around 25 flame score, and then for advantage, like around 75 flame score. Oh yeah, I haven't really talked about flame score yet. Does flame score make sense to you, or is that kind of like a weird thing?
There's a calculator, right?
Yeah, so I made a calculator. Basically, the calculator takes into account what if you are so basically like what if you have all of these things that are like average and like okay, so you have content in the game, right? Like these things.
Yeah.
So in order to be able to do this content in the game around these levels, you need to have a certain level of stats. And what are those stats and how much do you need? Well, they're these stats, and here's how much you need, basically. So that's what's set here. And then given that you have around those stats for these things, that takes into account how much stat in total do you roughly have? How much percentage stat in total do you roughly have? How much attack? How much weapon attack? How much percentage weapon attack? All of that stuff. And given that balance of stat within your account, that gives the addition of certain stat by a means like your flames gives you an extra certain amount of extra damage. So like let's say that you have all of this, right, from the early stage of the late game. If you add 20 stats and that's it, that will give you a certain amount of extra damage. But if you use the flame calculator and say like instead of that you get like was it like 5 weapon attack, right? Because that would translate to also to 20 flame score. That would be the same flame score. That will roughly give you the same amount of attack increase because of the balance of everything else that you would have around these stages of the game. But the balance changes as the stages change. That's why the stages, change at the points that they do, because your gear sets change, your amount of total Star Force changes, your levels, like how much money you have and how much you invest in Star Force and in potential changes. Sorry. So your total balance starts to change, and therefore the value of the stats that you can add that give you damage, those start to shift a little bit as well. So depending on what stage you're in, the score of the flame will change, and because it does, I might be over analyzing it here for you. Like, does the general just make sense? Like, cause we're basically looking at once you're done, and once you're in a certain stage, how good will it be then? Because if you look at your current situation, the balance is constantly still changing, right? You're still evolving. Like, oh, there's a Star Force event, boom, you suddenly go super hard on Star Force, and then maybe proportionately weapon attack gets worth less, right? Because you gain more weapon attack, Star Forcing past 15, and percentage can become way more valuable because maybe your potential on your equips is a little bit undervalued because you just spent all your money Star Forcing. But if you then look at your flame score, it can be like, oh, 1% all stat is actually worth like 12 stat now. Now I have to reflame everything. But what if that balance corrects itself again, right? And you start spending more money on potential after that to kind of restore the balance of where you spend your money. Well, then the value of the flame score is going to balance out again. So it's basically like future-proofing your flames is basically what we're doing.
Okay.
And the flame score is like the predictive value of like, will this be good enough when you're done, or does it still need work? And by comparing it to other items that are of the same quality, right, either flame advantage or not, and roughly within the same level range, you can also compare the flame scores and be like, okay, this one is already where I want it. Like, like let's say you get a CRA item that has like 95 flame score now, like your top or your bottom or something. You can be like, okay, well, this one's already done for the late stage of the game. Like, okay, I'm not touching this one anymore. I'm focusing on the other stuff. But what if they both have like 80 or something, and your cup has like 90 already, and there's nothing else to flame? You can be like, well, the cup is already really close to this. The cup is done. But if they both have 70, then I need to work on these two flames instead. So it'll help you compare, and it'll help you prioritize and just know which one's already done or not.
Okay.
So yeah, in the beginning you could use the flame score calculator to be like, it'll just tell you the numbers, and you can even save the numbers that you've used so that you can compare them to each other down here. But after a while, you just look at an item and you'll be like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I want. So in general, people will say like, oh, you're aiming for 60 stat and 6% all stat or something. Well, why are they saying that? Because that amounts to a certain amount of flame score, and if you look in here, it'll probably be like close, like around this number basically, like around 105, 110, and that's like what a lot of people end up aiming for. Yeah, the important thing is just to know that you got to find like a number that's like realistic for you. Some people just farm all day every day, right? And then they just have a lot of money to spend, so they just set very high standards. So for you, you might err a little bit on the lower side if you're still trying to save up for Star Force events, still trying to save up for potential events, like DMT great events recently.
Yeah.
Then flaming can play like a backseat for a long time until you're really settled into your equips. And then only when you're bossing, you're like, okay, this item has an absolute trash flame. Let's just throw a flame on there. But until then, flaming is definitely a smaller part of upgrading of those like three main ways to upgrade. Yeah. Maybe I mean, I feel like I was a little bit too wordy, but I think...
No, I got it.
Yeah.
I understand. I think where you're going with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, because the whole concept is to try to make it more simple so that you don't have to get too in depth with like, okay, I got this flame, like what tier of what is this? But more like, okay, is it good? Is it bad? Is it better than what I have? Is it worse than what I have? Can I keep this, or do I still need to work on it? Like that's what the flame score tries to make clear.
Okay. I guess some quick things.
Mm-hmm.
So transfer hammer you use to transfer Star Force, right? But the flames don't go across, but transposing does, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That's correct. Yep.
So you only transpose Commercy gear
Into Commercy gear. Yeah.
into
Oh,
Commercy gear.
sorry,
So you, that's what the
into Sweetwater gear, because Commercy gear also exists. That's the level 150 stuff.
true, true.
Yeah, so into Sweetwater gear. Yeah.
So that's pretty much only what Pap Mark and then
Dominator
don't
pendant.
don't. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's basically that, and like the Fafnir Katara into the Sweetwater Katara for dual blades for best in slot secondary.
Okay.
That's the only thing it's used for right now. But of course, it can change. Like in the past, it was the Meister earring into the Sweetwater earring. But that shifted because the drops from Golok shifted, and there's also a possibility for the set bonus to shift on 2 pendants, but that's not sure yet.
Okay.
Yeah. So Star Force transfer is -1. Flame transfers for for transposing and not for transfer hammer, and the potential transfers up to epic with the same lines when you transfer hammer, and it transfers up to legendary, but with different lines if you're transposing. So it like re-rolls them. Those are the main things, yeah. And there's some item limitations up to which level you can use that, but as long as you're aware of like the fundamentals of the system, that'll help you also see value in items that might be very shit by themselves. But if you are aware of like transfer hammer transposing and like what the possibilities are, then you can also see some potential value in an item as like transposing fodder, as we would say. But yeah, I see you're already working on the Absolab. That's mainly if you're like trying to transfer hammer past like 17, for example, for the long term. And like the sooner you start building a backlog of certain items, that'll help you. That once you get to the point where like now I want to do the upgrade, well then you'll also have the backups and you can start doing it immediately. You know, it's like if you're trying to craft something with smithing and you're like, okay, now I want to craft something. Well, if you have to start by gathering all the materials first, it's like, you know, it's a fucking Resident Sleeper.
Yeah.
You're like, oh fuck, and then of course now you need the drop, and now it's never gonna drop, right? Because then the pressure is on. But if you start early gathering stuff, you'll already have a pile of materials, and then if you need it, boom, you can immediately start using it. So that's kind of like the thought behind, you know, as long as the awareness of transfer hammer is there, then, you know, that checks that box.
Yeah, I'm still bumming that I threw away my Commercy shoulder
Oh yeah.
because that was I had to farm Madman for like a month and a half or something like that.
Yeah, that's always a joy. At least the drop rate went up, I guess, recently there, but it's still not insanely good. But you know, a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And ID, functional, visual.
I guess I know some skills have like base IED and then you have your stat IED. That's about it. What I know.
Yeah, so what you see in your stat window is what always applies no matter what skill you use, no matter what your target is. And then your functional ID would be regarding... Your functional ID would still be like 100% uptime IED, right? You wouldn't calculate anything in that gives you with like temporary buffs or certain events that can happen that give you more IED every now and then. It would have to be 100% uptime, but yeah, so it's either on hit effects, so like debuffs on bosses, or additional IED on certain skills. So that would be like through your boost nodes, or passive hyperstats are the most common ways, or built in on the item description itself, of course. And those numbers will only apply when you use certain skills, so they won't show up in your visual IED. So do you know what your functional IED is? Have you calculated that?
No, I haven't.
So as you get further into the game, it'll be very useful because the main thing, like when you're upgrading, and you know when you're upgrading your 3 most important items, right? You know what they are?
Secondary emblem weapon, is that?
Yeah, exactly. And why are those the most important is because they are the only 3 that have access to attack percentage, to boss damage, and to IED, right? Those are limited to those 3 items. And it's basically the balance between those 3 stats that really determines, like, you know, like range-wise how much you have, damage percentage-wise how much you have, and then how much penetration you have, how much ID you have to make sure that you penetrate the armor of the bosses. And the balance between those 3 is going to be like the foundation of damage output to bosses. So once you start trying to min-max, like, okay, how many lines of this do I want? How many lines of that do I want to optimize my damage output? In order to know how much you want there, you need to know your functional IED. This is really important, because now it shows 82. Well, you know that how higher, do you know how IED is calculated?
Not really.
Okay, so every line of IED is calculated individually, and it basically takes the percentage of how much you're still missing to get to 100%. So if you keep adding the same amount of lines, it will be less and less effective every single time, because the amount that you're missing to get to 100% keeps going down as you're adding sources, right? So let's say that you have 0% IED and you add a line of 30%, then you add 30% of how much you're missing, which is 100%. So you add the full 30%. So then you go up from 0 to 30%. And if you're already at 30% and you add another 30% line, well, the amount that you're missing just went down to 70%, right? So you add 30% of the 70%, which is 21%. So then you go from 30 to 51. So you already see that there's like 9%. It's not a loss, but like it's 9% less effective there. And if you're at 51 and you add another line, then you're missing 48. Missing 49, so you have 30% of 49, which is like almost 15. So then you're adding like 15%, so you end up at like 66 roughly, right? So as you go higher and higher and higher, the effectiveness of the IED goes down. So that does mean that going from like 60 to 80 is easier than going from 80 to 100. Well, going to 100 is like physically impossible, right? Because at the end, if you're at 99, well, you're adding 30% of the 1%, so you're adding 0.3. So every single line being less and less and less. It's kind of like that thing, you know, where you take like half the distance between two people, and then you take half of that, and then you take half of that. Like, do you know about the mathematical thing? Like, eventually you never reach the person, right? Because if you only take the half of the distance, you never actually reach them. That's kind of like how you have to see IED. Like, you always take like that extra step closer, but you never like really get to the 100%. It's kind of how it is. Unless you have a skill that specifically says on it that it has a line of 100%, because then it doesn't depend, that it doesn't even matter how much you have left, because it takes 100% of however much you need, which is always 100%. So then it always ends up at 100%, whether you have all of the ID in the world or you have none left. It's a little weird how that...
It's kind of depressing.
Yeah, so certain classes just have ID all over their kit, you know, like I'm pretty sure that I think Aaron has a bunch. I know that Dual Blade has a bunch. So these classes can put ID at a very, very low priority. But other classes that don't have many sources of ID need to put it at a very high priority. Now, usually what that also means is that those classes that have very bad ID tend to have like good percentage damage, or maybe even boss damage and attack, to kind of compensate for that. So that at the end, when you get to the finish line, you'll kind of get there at roughly the same pace. Is kind of the idea, right? Classes that had a lot of critical rate tend to have low critical damage, and vice versa. Like Angelic Buster has pretty low critical rate starting out, but very high critical damage. But then, you know, then you just work on your critical rate more. And then other classes that have low critical damage but high critical rate, they just work on their critical damage more. And then you end up roughly in the same spot. So it balances out. But how it balances out, you have to know the numbers. You have to know, what is my functional IED really, right? Because if you're really at 82, then your prescription for your weapon, secondary, and emblem is probably going to be like 3 lines of IED. But if it turns out that with all of the information you have, your IED is actually closer to like 90 or 92%, well, then we're just going down to probably only 1 line, maybe 2 at most. So that really is going to shape what your personal setup is. So if you check !IED in the chat, that takes you to, I think Dual Blade, I think Demon Slayer, and I think Dark Knight has like a decent amount as well. But it might be confusing with like how much critical rate. But yeah, some classes don't struggle at all for like critical rate and IED. That's one of the reasons why Dual Blade is in a really good position, because they don't really have to worry about critical rate that much early on. Later on, they kind of do. Or about IED, so they can just pump damage more and more and more. So the early progression with bosses is just very simple. Yeah, so you have this calculator. You basically just put all in the sources that you have. And then this will be the actual number that you're looking for. And then that number is what you're aiming for here under the functional IED. So it all comes back to this grid again, basically. This is trying to keep track of all of the ways that you can progress in the game and roughly your benchmarks, basically. Yeah, and if you're missing there, then you can go to the WSE, so that stands for Weapon Secondary and Emblem Optimizer, and that's where you could then put those numbers in, and then this will basically shit out for you, like this is how many lines of attack percentage you want, how many lines of boss damage you want, and how many lines of ID you want to get optimal damage output through your weaponry, secondary, and emblem. So that's what this optimizer will help you with. Does that kind of make sense? IED and how it interacts with everything and how you could optimize that?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's something I need to focus on, I think, because I think my boss is clean 215, which I don't know if that's high or not, but my ID's low, so.
Yeah, so high and low is always relative here, right? So compared to how high your IED is, that's probably on the high end. If I had that on my arc at level 260, that would be really low. So it totally like depends on where you're at. Some kits just have a lot of it. Some characters don't have a lot of boss damage, but when they're fully boosted, they go up to like 500% regular damage or something crazy like that. And then it kind of evens out. And they want to focus more on IED as well. Because that's another thing, right? So you can optimize your WSE for kind of like your clean situation, or you could optimize it for your optimal full burst situation, right? And literally pop everything and then look at all your numbers and then optimize for that, because that could make the situation still a little bit different than the other optimization. Also, do take into account that fully optimizing whatever the WSE says, this is like, so just casually get 33% attack on your weapon, right? And just get 2-line boss attack on your secondary, and then just get this on your emblem. Like, this is like 200 bill worth of cubes here, right? So it's not necessarily like, okay, so now you have to do this. It's more like, okay, so I have, I don't know, like I have the 30th one. Like, this is what I'm aiming for. This is what I'm actually getting. You know, this is slightly more realistic, although there's already 30% attack on your emblem here, but... And this is my final damage multiplier. So what's the best possible one? Oh, okay. Like, that's pretty close. Like, this is good enough for me, right? It can also be a thing like where you can just be more at ease with like, okay, this is good enough. I'm willing to settle for this. Like, this is fine. And for some people, it's like, well, now I'm going to farm 2,000 more hours and I'm going to, knock out this perfect setup instead. So it all comes back to like, what is your purchasing power, and what are your real goals? Like, what are you really trying to aim for? And trying to min-max, or just trying to be like, to know that you're not massively screwing up, that you're generally going in the right direction. Like, that's good enough to know. So I'm probably gonna look at ID a bit, because we didn't talk about how ID interacts with PDR. Do you know about PDR for bosses?
I know that they have a certain number to them, I guess. It's just like, I know PDR is like the enemy of IED, I guess, in a way.
Yeah,
you're
PDR
matching.
Yeah. True. Yeah, PDR is armor and IED is penetration, basically.
Okay.
So the higher nice. So the higher the percentage of PDR goes, the more effective your penetration is in making more damage go through. So let's say that a boss has 100% PDR. That means that if you don't have any IED, that means 100% of your damage is getting blocked, so nothing goes through, because it's like a final damage penalty. If the boss is 100% and you have 50% IED, that means 50% of the armor gets blocked, so there's still 50% blockage, so 50% of your damage goes through. But the problem is that the higher level bosses go up to, like, Cvel has 200%, and all the bosses like Lotus and Damien and higher have 300%. So let's say in your current situation, let's say you have a little bit invisible IED, right? Let's say you have 85%, right, as functional, and you go against a boss that has 300% PDR. That means that, quick math, I think 85, so 15 times 3, so that means I think 45% defense is still... Is that right? 300 times 0.85 is 240, 15, 255, right? So yeah, there's still 45% damage reduction. So that means that only 55% of your damage goes through. So if you were to go from 85, say, to 95, which seems only like 10% increase, and that's probably like 2 or maybe even 3 lines of 30%, right? Because of the reduced efficiency. Well, now you're blocking 95% of 300%, so only 15% defense is left. So you're doing 85% of your damage. So you're going from 55% of your damage to 85% of your damage with 10% extra IED. So you see how that can make a huge difference in the end game. That's why when people are pushing for like end game and black mage and everything, they're even pushing for like a functional ID of like 97, 98, maybe even 99, because of how many other sources of damage there are. But if you don't have the penetration to push that damage to the bosses, then then it's just not worth it. It's not efficient there. It needs to be more efficient in the grand scheme of things. That's why familiars with IED can be very helpful for you in this situation, most likely. That kind of stuff.
So should I mess with my Legion then?
Well, I'll look at the specifics. And your V matrix, are you like on top of that? Like you know which skills to max, you know how maxing goes, Legion grid. Okay. Yeah, I just like to go over all of those basics first, because now that you're like more on the same page with everything, like with an understanding of these things, it'll make way more sense what we're going to be talking about now. And yes, you're already looking at like, okay, so that means hyperstats, that means Legion, that means WSE potential, right? You're already thinking like, okay, where do I get IED? Like, where can I even start moving on these? So IED is one of those things you want to get as much of it as possible in sources where you cannot possibly get anything else that would otherwise like conflict with it, right? So like a line of on your emblem is good, but only if it's really necessary, right? Because it can conflict with attack percentage. That's why I mentioned already the Monster Parker medal. That one gets 10% IED, doesn't conflict with anything. What does it conflict with? Like 6 stat or something? If you can choose between 6 stat and 10% IED, that's a no-brainer, right? It's so much extra damage and penetration on bosses compared to 6 stat. Like, screw that. So that's one of those sources where you're like, IED, 100%. Those are the easy ones. But then it gets harder for Legion, for example. Yeah, like, okay, so how big of a chunk do you take in Legion? There could be calculators, right? So if you would throw this, if you calculate your functional IED, you throw it into the calculator, you could say like, okay, how much does this increase my final damage? You could do that with your current lines that you have, but I'm fairly certain, looking at your numbers, like how much damage bonus and boss damage you have, and what your IED is, because I don't think you gain a lot of IED, functional IED, I don't think, from being a wild hunter, that I'm fairly certain that moving the boss damage into IED instead will probably do you a lot of good, is my guess. Yeah. Because what it would also allow is for all of your pieces to go to one side of the board and not having to have like the double line go through, and maybe even put those pieces into decks instead, which will have more value than attack at this point. It's like an added bonus. And one other thing that's like, well, it's like minor, but if you don't need the critical rate, then moving this line 1 down instead, so it moves into ID here, will like have you have less 1 bleed over in the top right as well. But yeah, it's a pretty min-maxy thing. Oh, have you seen the Legion Peace Mover?
Yeah, that's actually what I used for this one.
Yeah, because someone put that on Reddit, right? Yeah, it's a very interesting one, because it finds the setup like so quickly. The one critique I have is that it bleeds over into the fields. So if you want to move over, it's more difficult to move between different setups. But possibly they will, incorporate that into newer builds. But it is a pretty good system. It's pretty nice. It's one of the things that I was talking about myself. Like, that would be really cool if that existed, and someone actually made it. So that's pretty cool that came into existence. But yeah. Yeah, I think that would probably already help you out a lot. You're at 5k. So what you do have though is once you get to 5.5k, you'll be able to get 5 extra characters into your Legion. Yeah, so every bump, every level up after a multiple of 2,500 gives you 5 extra instead of 1 extra. So when you go from 2.5 to 3, 5 to 5.5, and then again from 7.5 to 8, right? That's why 8k is even a thing, right? Because otherwise 6K would be where it's at. Like getting 2,000 levels just to get like 4 more characters in there in total is kind of like whatever. It's not really worth it. But 8K is worth it because it gives you the 5 extra. And that's why anything past 8K, everyone's like, well, nobody gives a shit, because 500 extra levels on top of characters that are at least level 200 just for one extra character in your Legion, like that's just not worth it, right? Yeah. So if you can get to 5.5, that'll be nice for 5 extra, and then of course getting to 6K to unlock your full grid, that'll be really good. But your priorities in general, like critical damage and boss damage, those are pretty good. But now that you know more about the value of IED, depending on what class you are, going for IED first might be more important. What could also be possible is that we, once I get to your actual equips, which is kind of probably what you thought the main thing was going to be about, but actually now it's more like a side thing, right? But once we get there, maybe just re-rolling one item there to having a line of 40% IED, for example, maybe that already fixes it as well, and you can kind of keep where you're at now with your boss damage. That's also possible. But yeah, the weapon secondary and emblem calculator could hopefully shed some light on what could be helpful. And then once you get to a point where you're kind of like settled, you're not really going to level anymore, you have pretty much as many hyperstats as you would get, you have access to the full Legion board, and you're kind of like done with all of that. At that point, there's also a full calculator made by some other people that you can put literally everything into, and it'll just completely roll out like, okay, to optimize your damage, this is what you want to do. And then it just tells you everything. Because at a certain point, you just need a computer to figure this out for you, right? There's too many moving parts, and your brain just can't deal with as many variables. It's just not possible. So that's not like a personal thing. I wouldn't even know how to begin trying to have all of these things in your brain at the same time.
No,
You just just looking at the damage calculator, like the damage formula, right? Just looking at that thing alone is like, how do you even begin to comprehend like how everything is going into this?
Yeah, people that make that type of stuff are just so smart, way beyond me.
Yeah, you got to start with you start with like that base formula, which either someone figured out or it's data mined or something, and then you just start filling in the extra variables, and it just starts getting so complicated. Yeah. And well, they hide like a lot of the maths and the formulas behind it, but if you saw like how those formulas were actually built out, it can get pretty complicated. I think I had like a Demon Avenger. I think I was trying to make a Demon Avenger calculator at some point. Oh, this is the one someone else made. When you're like trying to figure out how much HP you have, and then you have like your floor HP, and then yeah, it starts off pretty simple, but it ends up like starting pretty complicated. Damage range calculator. But yeah, you can make it look a little bit more clean if you know what you're doing, but it can also look like a total mess. like a bunch of spaghetti. Almost like Maple Code probably at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, so your matrix is well underway. You got all your boost nodes. That's just a matter, These seem pretty good, and you got them all in your level 5 nodes and everything, so that's pretty nice. Your explosion is, that's the big arrow explosion thing, right?
The blue thing. It's like a big bomb.
Yeah, like a big bomb, yeah. You like build up bombs over time and stuff?
I think it's like 8 or something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty big burst part, right? Okay. I guess this is a less important boost node for you, right? That's why it's not in a boosted slot.
Which one?
This last one. I think it has salvo.
Yeah, the other one I think.
These are your important ones, I think, right? Whatever these, like the Jaguar Bite, I think, final attack, and then your main mobbing skill. Yep. Okay. Do you know about the importance of a vicious shot?
I have it when I boss, but I guess I don't really know if it's that important. I guess people use it a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, so Vicious Shot starts as kind of like, I guess it gives me a little bit more damage, right? So for 30 seconds, you can go over 100% critical rate, and then 21% of the critical rate gets turned into critical damage. So, let's say you go up to, I don't know, like you probably don't have much over 100, right? Because you're just trying to aim for 100 and then you like top off because you're not bossing that much. So you just gain like 21% critical damage, which is a lot, right? Critical damage is really good. And I don't know if you already have critical damage on your gloves. I don't think you have Abso yet, right?
I have Abso, but it's just unique. I think I have
Okay.
just X.
Mm-hmm. So your critical damage is now at what was it, like 64? But critical damage is another way of increasing your damage, and you go up to 79 when you're buffed. So your critical rate goes. Let's see, you're 91 unbuffed. Sharp Eyes gives 20, so you're like at 111 or something, right? So 21% of that would be like 22, maybe 23. So you would go up from 79% critical damage to 102% for a short period of time, which is really nice. But what Vicious Shot does is the duration stays the same, the cooldown stays the same, but as it levels, a higher percentage of your critical rate goes into critical damage. And when you max it out, it goes up to 50%.
Oh, shit.
So you can boost your critical rate to the point, I think some archers get their effective critical rate during Vicious Shot up to about, I think even like 160% or something. And at that point, they just gain 80% critical damage for 30 seconds, which is absolutely massive. So when it comes to leveling boost nodes, that is probably the one you want to prioritize boost node wise to give yourself more burst damage on your character. And so one of the things is that it won't really apply 100% to your Jaguars, right? Because if you get unlucky there, but especially looking forward to your 4th V, which is going to be a large part of your burst, if you can add all of that extra critical damage during your burst to that skill, that's going to be a massive increase. So yeah, your boost nodes are already at like a good place. But like the skill that you probably want to start making skill nodes for once your boost nodes are max is probably going to be Vicious Shot to give you that huge increase on bossing burst. I think as well as the Otherworld Godly Blasting is also pretty good, giving you a lot of extra stat. So these two are going to be pretty nice.
So I guess I always looked at it as if I was close enough to 100% crit with Sharp Eyes, then I didn't need, like, I was looking at it like, if I had 80% without Sharp Eyes, then I'm fine.
Yeah, that's how it starts, right? Because you're not at 5th job yet. Even the bosses you're killing, you didn't really need it yet, Like, it gives you a little bit of extra, makes it a bit easier, but it's not super necessary yet. But once you start trying to get to min-max your damage, and you're trying to solo bosses that are significantly difficult, then being able to push out as much damage in a short duration of time becomes very efficient. And then going over 100 crit at the expense of something else that might give you more damage outside of burst will actually end up being more beneficial. And that's something that's very counterintuitive to min-maxing on an archer. Yeah, so maybe even getting rid of like 20% boss damage over 20% critical rate, even though the critical rate only works for 30 seconds every 2 minutes, might actually be more beneficial to you. And that's also part of the reason why your best in slot inner ability has critical rate in there, because it keeps scaling into critical damage into the end game. Yeah. But that also means that you now know that since you don't have points in your hyperstat for critical rate, you're basically sitting on 8% critical damage during your boost right there. That's going to be very cheaply available, right?
Okay.
And that does also mean that for the end, even if you end up going for 8k Legion, it's not like, well, my boss damage, my critical damage, and my AD is kind of filled, so everything now is kind of wasted effort. No, even up until like 10k Legion, everything's going to have good value for you, because that critical rate can fill right up and also give you a lot of damage. So that also means that you're never filling up any of the dex and attack. You're always going to have side areas to fill up to min-max. But that's a good perspective to gain, right? It is.
I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It is a little bit counterintuitive though, and like for the specifics on how much you really want to aim for and everything, I like I don't know those specifics, right? So joining specifically Archer Discords or like Wild Hunter Discords, they can probably shed a little bit more light on. But that's more like once you get to like 250 or something, right? When you're like at that point where you're kind of not really leveling that fast anymore, and you want to make sure that you're kind of, maybe want to move into Hard Lucid and Hard Will at that point, or at least practicing Will and maybe doing hard bosses. When it becomes really important that you're maximizing your damage during the domains and the benedictions, and you're min-maxing that, it'll probably be helpful to find like council of other archers that can help you out on like, oh yeah, you probably want to aim for like 140% crit or something. That's usually like the sweet spot, or maybe some go for 160 or 120 is enough. Like, I don't know. But yeah, they will be able to help you more with the specific numbers there than I can. I just know like the general the general things there, I guess. Yeah, but it's good perspective, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then aside from that, when you're specifically building your legion, what do you have a certain list of priorities now, or do you just do whatever you feel like, or?
Well, this account's pretty old, so I've just had characters over time.
A lot of mega burns and stuff.
So whatever I did at the time, I just did. But I think I have every character except for Explorers and Cygnus at 140. So it's at S. So I have to work on the other ones, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Explorers one of a time. You had the whole Maple Island saga, and then if you want to get your emblem, you have to do that whole stuff. So a lot of people tend to hold those until the last minute, and honestly, that's pretty reasonable, because a lot of their Legion, their member bonuses are pretty just straightforward, just stat, and if you don't need that stat, then they're just pretty bad. And their link skills weren't added, were still added like pretty recently, and before that was non-existent as well, so they just had lesser value. So it makes perfect sense. And the Cygnus Knights really don't come into play yet still with their link skills. It can be like a transition link skill in the beginning, kind of like a nice chunk of weapon attack, but it can help you be stunned less in Hard Lotus, I guess. But apart from that, their link skills aren't super valuable either. And their buffs are pretty much as well just like flat stat, that if you don't need, it's whatever. So it makes sense that those would be last on your list, and the other ones are definitely. I don't know if you've seen my link skill command or my links.
I have. I haven't really. I've seen it very briefly.
But you'll probably find in general most of the Explorers and the Cygnus Knights are pretty much down here. Like you see Thunderbreaker, Wind Archer, Blaze Wizard, Nightwalker, Dawn Warrior. You've got Buccaneer, Corsair, Cannoneer, Dark Knight, Paladin, Hero. Like these are all like way in the bottom of the list. So it makes sense if you're probably, without even knowing it, probably kind of follow this list already. And it makes sense that those are on the bottom. And right now, you're not leveling them for the link skills at all. That's just pretty much completely out of the equation. Except for the mages and the thieves, right? Those link skills can actually start becoming pretty useful. You're mainly just leveling up because you want to get more area in your Legion, because you want to be able to put more of your higher level characters into the Legion, and because that will increase your damage of your character. It's just another way of upgrading your character. It's just done by not playing your character, which is, inherently counterintuitive, but that's just how the game works. Yeah, nothing we can really say about that. That's just how it works.
I've been focusing on the mages because I know their link skills are really good. So
yeah, it is really nice. It tends to replace the Kana link skill, because you just lose 1% damage, but you gain 9% IED. And since we already talked about IED being something that's very useful for you, that would be a good switch. But yeah, as long as you have like slow and steady growth on the Legion, you do a little bit of work on that, whenever you feel like it, right? Because you have a limited time to play. But like if you make a habit of like in the weekend, if you play a little bit longer, to like on Saturday at least make like one character, or on Sunday make one character, maybe get it to like level 100 at least, like within the weekend. If you do that slowly, then you'll get to 5.5 in no time, and then you'll be able to put all those extra characters in, give you a little bit more breathing room. And then I think 6K is like reasonably doable in a short period of time. I don't know if we're gonna get Pink Bean anymore this year. I'm gonna guess not, but the Pink Bean for KMS that we didn't get is a Pink Bean event that also has a Mega Burninator event, so there might be one there, but yeah, I don't know if we're gonna get it. It seems like they're skipping it, sadly. I usually like the Pink Bean event, but yeah, it seems to not have fit their plans.
Just not prioritized, I guess.
Yeah,
Like
a lot of summer stuff.
Redheaded stepchild.
Yep. I guess they prioritize the familiars over it, yeah.
Yeah.
Tried to work on that. Make sure they could get that money from non-reboot.
Definitely not DMT.
No. I mean, they tried to fix it, I mean, to no avail, but at least they seemed like they were trying to make it work. It just didn't, but yeah.
I spent $6 bill on 2 unique potential scrolls.
Oof. Yeah.
Feels pretty good.
Feels great, yeah. Oh, you have plus 15,000 decks exactly. That's nice. I like that. 3 zeros. Beautiful. Okay, so with everything that we just talked about, when it comes to equips, what do you think with the new knowledge and the new insights? What do you think is the first thing that we should talk about?
Probably the 3 important ones, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So probably get off the fake Abzo eventually, because the stat I have on it now is probably not the best. The new Abzo weapon.
Yes, the fake Abzo is very acceptable for a newly level 160, even like newly 200 to 210 character, right? It's just because you don't even think about having Abzo at that point. You're maybe even not even earning your Fafnir. So yeah, having Abzo at that point is just always good, even if it has no flame on it. It's great. But once you get to the point where your other stuff starts going towards 17 stars, once you start thinking about getting most of your stuff to legendary, which of course the priority there is your weapon, your secondary, and your emblem. At that point, you're like, okay, this fake lab item, it's great and all, but you might want to think about moving that one. One of the main contributing factors is also like, do you have your set bonus already? Because if you reroll it, well, if you look at the potential, it has 10% critical rate, which even if the skill was maxed, would only translate to 5% critical damage. But now it's 21%, right? So it calculates to like 2% critical damage during your burst, and then 35 boss and 9% damage. But even one line could go up to 40% boss damage. So if you hit like 40% boss damage and, I don't know, like a 10% dex line or something, that's probably already almost the same as what you have now. So if you think about it that way, increasing the potential there is really good. The other thing you have to think about, though, is you'll have to reflame it, you have to re-Star Force it. And is that to compensate for that and to make that potential worth it. So is that total upgrade worth it? So that's one thing that we're going to keep in the back of our heads when we're looking at this. And then the other thing is you still have space to move into the glove and the cape.
Well, the glove I have is just, it has the Commercy fused with the fusion anvil.
Ah, that's what it is. Because I was thinking like you already have the 4 set, so are you using the Absolute hat here? Is it like what I was thinking? But you have the anvil the glove. Okay, that makes sense, right? Yeah, because you don't want to go for the 6 set bonus because this is just bad, right?
And then I have the cape and the new weapon in the inventory, so.
You have the cape waiting, yeah, because the set bonus of the cape is basically what you need to overcome the great stats that the Tyrant cape has by itself. So that's an important transition item there. Yeah, so all of that other stuff is we're going through it briefly here, but you got like cape. And you got the cape because you want to transfer hammer that into the Abzo without risking booming that one, right? And you have you have like at least one backup cape, but you can you get one extra one every week, so that's pretty safe. Yes. And then everything else is like 16. You're waiting for a 5, 10, 15 event to like push everything to 17.
So should I get everything to 15 first and then push to 17, or push to 17
on the more important stuff first.
I would just say it totally depends on which event is first. If there's a 30% off event first, and there's no like 5, 10, 15 announced anywhere near that, then just focus on pushing everything to 15 first, and then just hold it there. If there's a 5, 10, 15 announced first, then get as much of your high-level gear as a priority to 17 first. And if there's money left, and a 30% off later, then you could maybe throw a little bit of money at there. But I would just let it totally be dictated by the priority of the events that come around.
Okay.
Because at this point, your expenses are just so high that you just need the events to make it bearable. Especially if you don't have like a side farming character and you can just kind of like power through it by just throwing more money at it. You just have to play a little bit by the events. But like I said before, way in the beginning, right, that does mean that you have to keep a track of the events. So if you have the exclamation mark events that I made, I always keep this up to date. If a new patch comes out, I just add more weeks and I add all the color-coded, like I add everything here. So if you have like this as bookmarked somewhere or something, and you just check it every now and then whenever there's a patch, it'll all be here. So you'll know, like, is there an event coming? Do I have to plan around this, right? Do I have to make sure I can play on this day? Because the Star Force events and everything is always like Sunny Sunday now. So as long as you check the Sunny Sundays and see which week is important, and then make sure that you can upgrade on that day, then you should be fine, and you don't miss out on, like, the chance of once in a few months to be able to progress through the game. Wow, really plugging my commands here this time. Okay. I mean, I made them for a reason, right?
I'm kidding.
Stop with the commands already.
We get it, you're smart.
Yeah, you do things. You want us to click your stuff, we get it. Yeah, so all of that said, the main thing is your emblem. That's where the most room for improvement is right now. It's already legendary, so no tier up costs. It essentially only has one useful line, right? Strength, negligible. Damage, the way you see damage is that's one line of potential that takes up the same value as a 30%, 35 or 40% boss damage line on your weapon or your secondary, essentially. So this is only like a third to a quarter that efficiency. So a damage percent line, even though it does give you something, is, again, negligible in usefulness to what it could possibly be. So before switching your weapon to the other one and all the tier up costs, the Star Force costs, etc., although I think you already got it to like 15 or something, right?
It's at 15.
Yeah, it's at 15. Despite that, I think you can still make the most value for the lowest amount of money from your emblem at this point. And since you're with the IED, and the only other sources, I think, because your boost node 13, your boost nodes were like level 13, 14, so your total is like at level 38 or something, 37, something like that. Let's see, 13, 26, 30, 36?
Yeah, 36.
Yeah, so you're 4 levels away from getting your extra 20% IED there, but even just one line of 20% isn't going to cut it, right? Because you only get a fifth of the 18% you're missing, so 1/5 of 18 is 0.9? No, yeah, 1/20th, yeah, so 0.9. So you're only going to go up like 1% at best. So you're still missing like probably like about 10% that we want to get. So I think trading in your emblem currently for so what I talked about, the other options, right, is your medal and then getting IED on your familiars. So how are you like farming familiars at any point? Are you just are they just like a thing on the side that you're not really working on?
Side, I had gotten before they changed it, the spider and the pig and the snail and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Yeah, so some things that can give you damage would be, if you can get any kind of critical rate on it, would give you something, right? But the main things that would be useful for you, especially in the lower tier familiars, so common and rare are pretty much 90% or 95% of the ones you're going to find. Those can have 15% IED lines. So that would still be very useful for you to stack. But even if you have that, I think you can still benefit from a line of IED on your emblem. So I would advise to try to aim for a high percentage IED line, so either 40 or 30, depending on... wait, can you get 35 actually? I think you can. On anywhere there, plus at least one line of attack, like as a goal to have on your emblem. If you can hit like 49 and something, that would be nice. Or if you hit 12 and then a line of 30% and whatever, like that would be very good to keep for now. And that'll just help you with all the extra penetration, so you can make sure that your damage actually goes through to the boss. And then aside from that, your where's your secondary again? Oh, it's at the bottom here, right? Yeah, 12 and 9 and 30 boss. Yeah, so for this one, a 12% damage is way more of a redeeming factor here, because you already have a line of boss and line of attack, right? So now it's not just one of the lines you're relying on for the damage, it's actually one of the extra lines that just is tying the item together. And since this is the quote-unquote temporary secondary, right? Because I think I saw you had the Princess No one. Because of that, this one is like great where it is. No need to invest further into this. Like anything that you're going to be investing in secondaries is going to go into Princess No once you're trying to min-max that. And that's going to be much lower, much further down the line. So the priority after the emblem would be to work on the weapon, like we talked about. So yeah, probably any kind of combination you can get there in potential between attack and ID and boss damage will be, for your functional damage output, an upgrade compared to what you have now, especially once you add the cape, because the cape will give you the 30% boss damage set bonus, and that will basically compensate for the loss of the 35% boss damage line now, even if you end up settling for like a combination of attack and IED, then it will still be better than what you have now. And then the only thing, because your new weapon was on top somewhere, right? Yeah. Yeah, the only thing will be like to get a good flame for it.
So would you say that the damage, boss, and attack is fine on that for now then?
Oh yeah, I see it now. It's probably, considering everything you have, it's probably fine for now, because essentially so again, right, the boss damage and the damage together is less than a prime line boss damage, right? Because the prime line boss damage could be 40, and since damage and boss damage are pretty much interchangeable because of they get thrown into the same pile when you're bossing. Essentially, this is just a 2-line item, but you're kind of aiming for 2-lining right now. Like, I didn't tell you to get your emblem to like 49.9 or to like 30, just get 30% attack on there, right? Because that's not a realistic upgrade for you. That would disproportionately take away so much money that you could get so many more gains with everything else you have. So this would be okay for now, but of course, eventually you want to aim for 2 lines of attack and one line of boss, probably.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, in the beginning, again, percentage damage is like a redeeming factor that like helps you kind of tie the item together, but eventually it just becomes a throwaway line. So just, I assume that whenever you have a flame, you're throwing it on your weapon now, just to see if it's switchable.
Yeah.
Because we talked about the flame scores, right? So in your stage of the game and for the next probably like almost 30 levels, one weapon attack is roughly equivalent to 4 stat, right?
Okay.
So that means that your flame score, if you just looked at flame score, usually you don't do flame score for your weapon, but if you would do that for your weapon, and just to clarify, the reason we don't do that is because they can get percentage boss damage and percentage damage, and that's very tricky to calculate that, because that's very character specific on how valuable that is. So that's why we don't really do that. But since it has 75 stat, that's roughly like 20 weapon attack, right? A little bit less. But you see that the tier 6 on the other one is 79 attack. So, that's like a 60 attack difference. And 60 attack difference is like 240 stat worth, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at the flame scores of your other stuff, and if you get to distribute 240 stat like among all your characters, that's like a huge upgrade on all the items you have. So that's why the flame on the weapon is like a huge priority, because it just, proportionate to how much of a gain you can make on all the other items, it everything else pales in comparison, basically. Yeah. Okay. I was looking at your current badge. That's like an old. I think I have that on one character as well. It's like an old event one, right?
Yeah, this character's from years ago, so
It's old
I
as
just
fuck,
recently got back out on him. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. Because I'm considering like the set bonus, because even though the other one is like better than the Crystal Ventus badge, if you unlock the 3 set bonus, then I think the Crystal Ventus can already be better again, right? Because it gives you 10 all set, 5 weapon attack just for the set bonus.
Mm-hmm.
But that would only be worth it, of course, if you use 3 items from this set.
Yeah, I don't know what else I would use besides.
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm just seeing if there's any possibility there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because you're using. Yeah, I didn't go through your accessories yet. Are you using 3 sets reinforced?
Yeah, I have 2. It says. Yeah, I have 3
Yeah.
sets. Sorry, 2
3
pendants
set.
and a belt.
Yeah, 2 pants and a belt. And are you close to the? So that's one thing to get ID from and boss damage as well, right? If you get the ring or the earring. That would be 30 boss, 15 IED, which is pretty huge as well.
So I have a superior earring and a superior ring.
Uh-huh.
So then should I focus on getting superior pendants then and belt?
Yeah.
instead?
Yeah. If you're already that close, you'd rather focus on getting for purchasing wise, getting a pendant, and then in the boss runs that we talked about, and hopefully you can get the belt as a drop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before that point, are you close in coins to the pendant?
I actually just spent them
Okay.
on the reinforced one because I didn't feel like waiting.
Yeah, no, I get it. The general advice now I give to people is to just skip reinforced. I feel like it makes more sense, just because you're eventually gonna go get superior. Don't get me wrong, like it is possible that for some people they just won't ever really get to full set superior, and it's like kind of a pipe dream to aim for that. And if they can get reinforced, that just makes more sense for their personal situation. But I think most people in general, when you're playing this game for the long game, I think it makes most sense to just aim for superior and kind of, as weird as it is that you're using like boss accessory drops from like Zakum and Horntail until you get to like 240. It feels a little bit strange, but yeah, that's kind of just what makes sense progression wise now, even though it's awkward. I get the feeling of like, I want something new. I want to feel like I'm moving forward with this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's just get reinforced instead. Yeah.
I got put in an awkward spot because I started playing this character before, I think a month before they changed Gallix.
Mm-hmm.
So I had gotten half of the superior stuff, and then they changed it, and I was like, well,
yeah,
I can't get the rest of it until I'm much stronger. So I just dumped it into reinforced.
Yeah, and in this case, a half of something is absolutely nothing, because if the set bonus almost works, then it doesn't, and then it's just not worth, because the base stats of the items isn't great. Star forcing them up is definitely not evident, and they don't get flame stats. So yeah, they're definitely they just go from being like very no brain early game picks to being like very hard to get borderline end game items. Yeah, it was a huge shift there for sure. The reason that earring wise I do get that, but like ring wise that could still be an option, right? Because eventually you do go for the reinforced and the superior ring like altogether. And at this point the reinforced ring would, like, imagine that you were able to buy a ring that has an added bonus of wearing it, giving you 30% boss and 15% IED right now. That's a crazy value ring, right?
Yeah.
So that's essentially like the extra bonus that's hanging on the edge of a reinforced ring right now, and it becomes an endgame ring as well. So it's not even like just temporary progression; it's also pretty long-term progression. So, yeah, I would let it depend. Like if you really don't have a belt yet in like a month or in a few months, but you do have the coins, I would say get the ring first for that boost. If you do get the belt by that point, then just skip the ring for now, go for a pendant, and then circle back to the ring afterwards. Is what I would do.
Okay. Copy.
Yep. Copy. All right. So after that, I'll get more general now because we're like kind of long in, and you probably want to go do something else at this point as well.
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah. In general, since you're getting your progression mostly out of this character, and you also just want to make sure that you just train it and not have a secondary farmer, all that stuff, I think you can get a lot of value out of getting drop rate / meso-obtain from your accessories for now. So I would just aim for 5 lines of meso-obtain, 4 lines of drop, right? So 9 in total, 9 accessories, the rings, the pendants, iron face, and the earring. 1 line meso or drop, and then another line of dex on all of those items in legendary is what I would aim for, so that you lose the least amount of damage, because they all still have 1 line of dex. So that would probably be roughly equivalent to how much dex percentage total you already have right now. But you will gain all of the added value of the meso-obtain and the drop rate, and that'll make it so that you make way more nodes, right? You can also, in certain scenarios, you can make it so that whenever there's an event out, you can get the event items faster, so you don't have to spend as much time every day on trying to cap points and stuff, and it's not as much of a disruption from your daily routine. And of course, you make way more money while you're training, so that you can have more value if you're using Legion buffs and stuff. You can just get way more value out of your training, not just by experience, and because of the other things we talked about, and the realigning and the redoing of your emblem and stuff. Most of the time you will not lose any kind of kill potential because of that, because you're, moving away from dex also goes at the same time as gaining more dex on the lines of dex you do have, so you roughly stay equally strong. Yeah, so that would be like the next step. Like I said, flaming is like a slow process, like on the side, so you're mainly going to prioritize just your new weapon, so you can switch to that when it gets that good flame. And then moving into your star forcing and moving into your cape to get that added set bonus, that's going to be an important move. Like Mabel 2 or Ursa's Monster Park, right, for the medal, those are important. So keep an eye out for the winter event. Hopefully then we'll get a heart that actually has somewhat of potential, not this this shitty
trash.
It's a waste of money, honestly. Like, you can get some stat out of it, which is valuable compared to having nothing, but it's that's about as much as you can say about it that's positive. Other things like events to look out for, I would say Dark Lords of Darkness event usually comes around Halloween. Decabine event to look out for with stronger permanent totems. Possibly ring events, right? Like if you have more event rings as backup rings. Although, if you go for a line of meso and drop, basically all of these rings can just move into being drop rate rings, apart from maybe the solid. And then, do you still have your Kana treasure ring? Oh, I see it. Yeah, you have it,
Yeah, I have the Kana, I have and then 2 event rings, and then the Horntail one.
The Vengeful... Yeah, and the Synergy. Yeah, okay. So you have a total of 8. Yeah, so 8 should work, right? Total of 8. The only thing that will be added will be the Reinforced ring, and then later the Meister ring. And then you'll aim for Superior, Reinforced, Meister, and then either Solid or Kana, whichever one is better at that point, will be your damage rings, and then the other ones will be your drop rate rings. And then pendant-wise, moving into a Superior, gonna reinforce a ring. If you get a Superior belt, that'll be like 4 set because you already have the earring. So one thing that will happen then a bunch later is that you go for like a second set of eye and face, right? So that you have 1 for drop rate meso, 1 for actual full damage. Because just getting... So after that's legendary, that's all done, then the next priority is to get your eye face, and your eye face will already be legendary, but to get your Abzo all to legendary with 2 lines of stat, just because the 160 tier has the 1 extra % per line, so there's just more value in there tiering those up. And your CRA is probably going to be like the latest stuff, like the very last stuff that goes to legendary, because their legendary tiers have way more junk lines, so it just becomes progressively expensive for them to actually get good stats, and it's a lot easier to get. You probably found that out yourself, right? When you were star forcing them on unique, it was actually pretty easy to get 2 lines on there.
Yeah.
Compared to some other items where it just takes forever. Oh yeah. The priority for your Absolab stuff is going to be your glove first, right? And getting a critical damage. That's going to be a very, very big boost for you. Of course, it's going to make your range probably look lower, right? Because critical damage doesn't go into your damage range. But, you know, your output goes up. But yeah, we talked about critical damage already, so that'll make sense. Yeah, and then just 2-line on that stuff. I'm thinking if any extra items come into play at that point, but I think you're going to be like 17, and then everything's going to go to unique, and then 2-line to 3-line. And at that point, yeah, like Lotus and Damien solos will be easy. You'll be doing Lucid in a party a while already. Then it's going to be just a matter of leveling, and then you'll be like doing party will and stuff once you get to like 245 or something.
Yeah, coming in 2023.
To cinemas near you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but hopefully like bossing being the most fun. Like we did center a little bit heavier on the bossing, but I think once you get your accessory set with like the drop rate and mesoptane stuff, you will see a lot more nodes, and they'll help you level up your boost nodes. That'll help you with your final damage, and then the one-shotting is going to come in heavily. But again, like it's very dependent on your arcane power and doing your dailies there. And if you really do all of your dailies every day, well, you know, like the killing dailies and stuff, you'll actually see your experience go up at still like a decent rate, because it's kind of like training, you know, training in disguise without even wanting to. They're just making you train.
So would you prioritize killing for dailies than like the mini games, or?
When does that come into play? Isn't that mainly in Morass that comes into play?
Well, I mean, like, like, so you have like the Vanishing Journey daily quests, and then you have like the other one.
Yeah.
If I were to prioritize one or the other, let's just say
Oh.
I need to do.
Let's
I
say you
don't
only
have
have
much
10
time.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you've unlocked up to here, right? So I would say probably the kill and drop rate would be the fastest one because you can auto complete a bunch of them.
Okay.
So if you only you end up with 2 dailies, right? In Vanishing Journey, or do you end up with 3?
I actually don't know.
You start with 5, right? So and you can speed it up twice, I think. So you end up with 3.
Yeah, I have 2.
Yeah. Oh, you have 2. Yeah. Okay. So if you manage to, so you kill 200 monsters and get like 20 drops, and you get 8 symbols. So at that point, it basically becomes a 4 symbol per daily at that point. So that will have more efficiency, in my opinion. And for like Choo Choo, if you have a double sped up, you just do hard mood OPQ 1 time, which shouldn't take you very long, and then boom, that's 15 symbols. So yeah, so if you're short for time, like those are the ones I would skip if you're short for time. Is like the kill quest in the kill quest in Choo Choo. Even at this point, there's probably also only 1 kill quest for 4 symbols, right? So probably the kill quest in Lacaline is the lowest value, right? Because you still need to do 2, but you only get 4 symbols for it, so it's like 2 per daily. But like I don't know how you're doing with Spirit Savior, if that's working out for you.
I tried it. I think I just need to get better at it.
Yeah, because once you get that one down, like in the beginning, you still have to do it 3 times a day, so that's still quite intensive. But it is 10 symbols a day from that, and the kill quest is 8, so your arcane symbol can level up very quickly in the beginning. It requires some practice. The one thing there is that you don't scale as well there because the arcane. So like both Dream Defender and Spirit Savior are not arcane maps, so you don't deal bonus damage in there. So that's why those monsters might take a little bit more damage than you might think. You're like, why are they not dying? Yeah, it's because there's no arcane power multiplier in there, so you do have to kind of force through them. Yeah. Yeah, all I would say there is try to if you're trying to so do you know about the minimap maximizing thing?
I don't think so.
So if you go into Spirit Savior, your minimap goes 1 size smaller than it usually is, and it doesn't show you the entire map. So if you look on stream, if you see like where the world is, right, and the minimap, If you're in the arcane map and you hover over where the D is in world, and then you use NPC chat to go in, and then as soon as you're loaded in, you click. Your mouse will be right at the point where it maximizes your minimap, and you will see the entire map. So you see where all of the spirits are, and it'll be easier to map out, like, okay, which route do you want to go? You want to start left? Do you want to start right? How are you going to jump over things? It'll give you like a wider picture of things, and you'll be able to see better where the spirit is and like how close he is, and if he's catching up to you.
Okay.
So that's one thing. And the other thing, I don't know if you're using rope lift a lot, but rope lift can work kind of against you and slowing you down. So I would always advise people to try to get as far as possible without rope lift, and only use rope lift in like extreme circumstances or when you know you're definitely 100% safe, and not rely on it too much in the beginning. Is what I would say.
Okay.
As general spirit savior. I also have like a specific spirit savior video. I think it explains the thing with the map as well. I think it's under !SS, I think. Yeah, I have a video for that as well. Pretty much anything after this video where you think like, oh, I need maybe some extra information, or what the fuck was he even talking about here because it was too much, just ! In front of it, and then I probably have a link or a guide or a YouTube video or something that explains it, where you can pause me, rewind me, maybe get a bit more...
Take you out to dinner first.
Get a bit more context, or like... go for a walk a little bit, go for a smoke, and be like, okay.
All right, here we go.
Yeah. Okay, I got that part. Okay, move on to the next one. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but other than that, I think we covered most of it. Yeah. I was thinking interoperability, but we did cover that. Yeah. Yeah, just slow and steady with the arcane power with the Legion, and yeah, fix WSE, then work on accessories. And then from there on out, it's mainly going to be just like bossing practice, right? But if you're already party clearing Lotus and Damien, then you'll just get better and better with the mechanics, and you'll also get a better feel of when can I like solo this. But once you get that 6 set bonus from the... Once you get the extra IED, I think you won't really feel your damage go up, because there's so many numbers and they move so quickly that you can't really tell how much damage you're really doing, right? It's more like when you do a big burst and it's like, oh damn, like his HP is like a lot lower than usually it is with like one big burst or something. Like that's when you'll see like, oh, the extra IED is actually making a huge difference. Yeah. So yeah, setting up the ID, and then as your Legion grows, 5.5, more characters into the ID there as well. Monster Park Medal. Yeah, and then Vicious Shot leveling, that's going to give you huge bursts increase as well. And I think at that point we'll be at the summer. You get the Fairy Heart, you get the 4th V, and then you'll get way more big reliable bursts. Oh, and there's another thing changing soon, I think, right? Where you'll be able to double flash jump while holding down your attack key or something.
Yeah, I heard good things and bad things about that. It's good because you can move, but so I guess the main feature that people like about Wild Hunter is that you can jump back and forth or move back and forth. So you're like, you almost swing to like hit your bullets, but I guess it's slowed down quite a bit. I don't know. I'll have to look, but.
Oh, the like jumping forward and then backward in your flash jump is going to be harder to do?
So like when you're like, say you miss a mob behind you, you can flick left and flick right really quick. So one bullet will travel and kill the mob. And then I guess it's what I saw on a Reddit post that
oh, right.
If you flick faster,
there's like the startup time for your arrow, so you have to be aiming in the same direction longer before the first arrow actually fires, right?
That's what I saw, but I don't know.
I'm not sure if that was like in Tespia or if that was an actual release.
I've been trying to find videos, but I can't find them. So.
Yeah, these are like the things that just kind of come with updates that you kind of have to figure out. Because if you look at the numbers, it's like, oh, this looks great, and then practically it can actually just be way worse. Yeah, so I think you're doing a good job being like carefully optimistic, but like you want to have the facts first, not to get your hopes up too much. Yeah, that's probably good. I'm just gleefully optimistic because I don't play the class, so I don't really have to deal with any of the ramifications if it goes south. So I'm just
100%.
Yeah, but yeah, when it. Okay, well, I'll be praying that it's an actual upgrade and actually like a quality of life improvement and not a yeah. But I mean, regardless, you're just gonna have to deal with it, right?
Yeah. Either way, it's
Yeah. It's just gonna be
they're
your
not gonna be
reality.
like, hey, are you okay with this?
Yeah. You're
Yeah, I love it.
Or you're gonna be like, no, and they're oh, okay. Well, just so you know, we're
Okay.
not gonna change it. So
Thank you for your survey on Nexon.net. We appreciate your
How likely are you to recommend this game to a friend?
5 out of 5, always.
I love when I crash and then I get the pop-ups like, oof, this is
You're
the
like-
best time to ask me.
Yeah, so.
I definitely
when
want
that
people to go
comes.
through this. Yeah, great timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
I just had like one other quick question, I guess.
Yeah, go for it, dude.
So, the Fakes Lab, I'm gonna get in an hour.
Yeah.
So, would it, I know you said this before, it wouldn't even be worth to get it on Akana, but
Yeah.
would it be worth it all to get on Akana so you could boss to get Fafnir? Is that even like, does that make any sense?
So what kind of the biggest chunk of like problem for Kana? So are you planning on soloing it with the Kana?
That was kind of gonna be my like my true solo progression character, just so like to have something to mess around with, and if I ever wanted to have a farmer, I could have it if I needed it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that it was either that or putting it on my beast tamer.
I mean, if that's your goal, then I think it could be a good option. Yeah. Although that would put like all the pressure of getting IED fully on your emblem, right? Because you cannot get any IED lines on your secondary because those don't work on Haku. So, and since the potential lines on your main weapon would be locked, all of your IED necessities would be locked into your emblem, which probably means that you'd have to definitely rearrange your Legion into IED, right? But you might even have to go for 2 lines of IED on your emblem to be able to make that to swing that. But you'd have a lot of money available from not having to upgrade your weapon at all, and you get to that point way faster. So, yeah. So in that scenario, I think that could work, but just be aware of like the IED ramifications there.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool beans. I think that's all I got.
Cool. Okay. Well, I hope that the general understanding of some of the things in the game that were a little bit confusing are a bit more clear now.
Definitely.
Yeah. If you still have questions about like which item has flame advantage and which one doesn't, and what the score, you have the calculator, you have access to the lists, and then after a while, it'll just make sense. Like all of the Golic stuff, no flame advantage. All of the Sweetwater stuff, no flame advantage. In general, the equip sets, Fafnir and above, that come from bosses and are hard to get, all flame advantage. And then it just becomes like, some of the specific items in between. You just have to know. But if something is in the meta and people mention it and it's something that a lot of people are aiming for, generally it's because it has flame advantage and because it has that possibility of giving you a lot of extra stats, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the session and good luck on everything.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yeah. You're welcome. And then I'll see you in the chat probably later.
Yep, definitely.
All right. See you
Thanks
around.
again. I appreciate it.
Yep. See ya.
All right, bye.